Introduction, important definition, and residential status. Today's schedule is tax slabs, exempted incomes, and salary head. So let us start with tax slabs. See, yesterday we have discussed what are the types of persons are there. So each person will have the different type of tax rates. So let us start one by one. Let us start with individuals. What are the tax slabs I am discussing now, which is related to assessment year 20 and 21, that is financial year or previous year 1920. The incomes which are all accrued in the year financial year 1920, the taxes will be paid in the 2021 with the following rates. Here I have made it for individuals. There are three category of individuals has been identified. Say for example, resident super senior citizen, that is 80 years and above, and resident senior citizen who is 60 years and above. Other individuals, HUF, AOP, BOA, AJP. There are three categories I have identified. When it comes to individuals, the other individuals and the HUF, AOP, BOA, all the tax rates are same. That's the reason I have categorized in the same field. So what is the slabs you are having? For resident super citizen up to 5 lakhs, the tax rate is 0, that is nil, you need not to pay any taxes. 5 to 10 lakhs, after that is a cumulative figure what we are discussing. 5 to 10 lakhs, it is 20%. Above 10 lakhs, it is 30%. So how we are going to calculate this? I'll try to give an example so that it is for easy understanding. Say for example, an assessee who is super senior citizen having 12 lakhs of income. So what we discussed, up to 5 lakhs, this is zero rate, that is 0%. He is not going to pay any taxes. Now this 12 lakhs I am categorized into three parts, that is first 5 lakhs one part, and next 5 lakhs is the second part, and the balance is 2 lakhs. So sum total comes to 12 lakhs. Sum total. Okay. Now let us take the 5 to 10 lakhs bracket. 5 to 10 lakhs. It is 20%. So it will be like 5 lakhs into 20%. This comes to 1 lakh. Then balance 2 lakhs, that is above 10 lakhs, it is 30%. That is above 10 lakhs, it is 30%. That is 2 lakhs into 30%. It is like this. So total tax payable is 1.6 lakhs. This is how we are going to calculate for the individuals, that too especially for super senior citizen. In the similar way, if the same income will take for resident senior citizen, then the basic exemption limit is 3 lakhs. Up to 3 lakhs it is nil. Then 3 to 5 lakhs, it has been mistakenly 2.5, but you need to take it as 3 lakhs to 5 lakhs, that is 5%. Above 5 lakh, 5 to 10 lakhs, it is 20%. Above 10 lakhs, it is 30%. So if we take the same income, here we are going to add one more, that is up to 3 lakhs, it is 0%. 3 to 5 lakhs. Yes, fine. Then, so here you will have 3 lakhs. Balance here 2 lakhs. So here the tax is 0. Here can take 5%. Is a 1 lakh and the tax will be 1.7 lakh. This is for senior citizen. And let us go to other than these two cases. That is, the age is below 60 and non-resident individuals and HUF, AOP, BOI and AGP cases. So what is the tax rates here? We are having up to 2.5 lakhs it is nil, 2.5 to 5 lakhs it is 5%, 5 to 10 lakhs is 20 and above 10 lakhs it is 30%. So let us, in the same case, let us analyze it. So 2.5 lakhs, it is nil, 2,50,000. Again, here it comes 2,50,000. So total taxes will come to 1.72 lakh. This will be the difference between the three different cases. So there are three categories. One is normal, other two is resident super senior citizen having age 80 years or above and senior citizen above 60 and the other cases. This is what regarding individual taxation. And let us come to other cases. For LLP or firm or local authority, the tax rate is 30%. For companies, we can categorize into two parts. One is domestic company and a foreign company. Under for domestic company, there are two tax slabs are there. One is having turnover below 250 crores in the year. For them, it is 25%. For others, it is 30%. In case of foreign companies, it is 40%, is a flat rate for everything. And when it comes to cooperative societies, it is first 10,000, it is 10%, 10 to 20,000, it is 20%, above 20,000, it is 30%. These are the categories you are having the. In addition to these taxes, you need to pay surcharge. Yesterday I have discussed. In addition to basic tax, there will be a surcharge and also cess. On the surcharge plus tax, you need to pay the cess. These are all the cases. Yesterday itself I have mentioned about this. And let us come understand few words with respect to taxation before going further. Generally, we use the word exemptions, deductions, and relief and rebate. These are all the words we use. See, exemptions and deductions, which is related to income based income. Here it is tax. Whenever you are talking about exemption, exemption is nothing but that portion of income, it is not going to form part of your gross total income itself. That means, say for example, if I say sale of agricultural land is exempted, that is rural agriculture land. So it won't be part of your tax calculation itself. But when it comes to reduction, first it will be taxed, then they are going to allow some way of relief. That is, they are going to deduct from income and balance you are going to pay tax. This is a reduction. Reduction is allowed out of income. This is called deduction. And exemption, it won't be part of your total income itself. When it comes to rebate and relief, rebates usually, like they are going to give specific rebates, saying that, say for example, in case of arrears of salary, there is a one specific section, it says section 89, which deals with whenever you are having any arrears of salary, you need to calculate accordingly and you can give some relief, because arrears of salary accumulated over 5 years or 10 years you are getting now. Because of that, there will be higher tax slab. Due to that, there will be higher tax payment of taxes. So to give some concession, they are going to give rebate and relief, which is related to wherever you have paid already taxes on that. Say for example, global taxation. If global taxation means in India you are going to pay tax, and the outside India, what are the incomes you have already earned, there also you would have paid some taxes. On that, they are going to give some relief. That is, they are going to allow some rebate or relief or some reduction out of taxes, that we call it as a relief under income tax. So these are very 4 words we are going to use it further. That's the reason I wanted to explain you on this. Now let us see what are the exemptions you are having under income tax. There are so many exemptions are there. I'm not going to deal with all the exemption because of lack of time. I just captured few of the exempted incomes here so that it is day-to-day life we are going to use. These are all the exemptions. That's the reason. Say for example, section 10 subsection 2 deals with share received by a member from income of HUF. As we discussed, HUF is a separate entity. Whenever there is an HUF is separate entity, you would have paid taxes over that. So HUF consisting of who are all the members and co-partners, and Karta is a consisting an HUF. So whenever you are getting any money from the HUF, it is exempted. Why? Already the same amount of whatever you are received as an income in your hands, the HUF already paid taxes on that. So that's the reason they should not be having double taxation. So they have given exemption. Sorry, exemption on the share received by a member from HUF. Like that, section 10 subsection 2a deals with share of profit of a partner from partnership firm. If you are here, firm means again it includes registered, unregistered and also limited liability partnership. Under this case, what are all the amounts you have received as a share of profit, that will be exempted. Here I am not mentioning about the remuneration and interest. That is independently taxable, that we are going to deal under business income, how we are going to calculate that. But here share of profit is only exempted. Yes, when it comes to loss, what is going to happen? Yes, when the positive fare is outside your income, negative fare automatically also it is outside your income. So it cannot be like, yes, there is a profit, it is exempted, it won't be part of your income. Minus figure, it cannot be adjusted against other incomes. So if profit includes losses, so it is outside the ambit of income tax. I can say it is outside the ambit of your gross total income. And again, interest received on money in non-resident external account. See, whenever a person is an NRI, say for example, Indian origin or Indian citizen, but he is having the outside income. Say for example, on employment, he went US, there he has a separate account. He would have repatriated that amount to India, and in India, we have the option of giving him normal SB account, or he can have an NRE account. What NRE account is? It deals as if the amount is lying outside India only. See, until unless it is transferred to the normal account, it won't be considered the amount has been repatriated or taken into India. So what are the interest accumulated on NRE account, that is non-resident external account, which has been exempted, because once we deem that amount itself is not came into India, so we cannot tax it. That is a prima facie. And also the benefit out of this is, say for example, if they bought a US dollars in India, there is an inflow of foreign exchange into India. So whenever there is an inflow of foreign exchange, it is an additional benefit to the government of India or in any country. So when there is a benefit, just to have the small taxation as an interest portion, definitely they should not concern about that interest part. They need to more concerned about the getting inward remittances. And also section 10(10)(b)(c), compensation received or receivable on account of any disaster. Say for example, there is an earthquake has happened, the government has compensated for certain building collapse or business collapse or anything. Those are kind of a capital receipts, it is a compensation, so it is also exempted. And 10(10)(c)(c), which is related to tax on non-monetary purposes paid by the employer. Say for example, my employer and I am having the, say for agreement saying that every month I need to get a salary credit of 1 lakh rupees. I don't know what all the taxes I am going to pay or you are going to pay. My account should be credited with 1 lakh. So for this 12 lakhs per year, there will be an additional tax of 1.5 lakhs approximately, let us assume. Who is going to bear that? As per my agreement, the employer need to bear that 1.5 lakhs by default. So what he is going to do? He is going to pay me 12 lakhs, and on behalf of me, the employer himself is going to pay 1.5 lakhs as a tax. Now the situation what it comes, once he is paying on behalf of me, indirectly it is an income for me. There are two ways of treating it. One, I am going to add that 1.5 lakhs to my income, and based on that I am going to recalculate and pay tax. This is a one way. Second way is I'm not going to do that. The employer also not going to claim that 1.5 lakh as an expenditure. In that case, we have the option, you don't pay any taxes in the hands of recipient, that is employee, you don't pay any tax. The employer is not allowed to claim that expenditure as a business expenditure. So indirectly, if you see that 1.5 lakhs indirectly is not allowed an expenditure, means they would have paid extra tax on that particular 1.5 lakhs. Either the way, the government is not losing anything. The only thing is it's in between the employer and employee contract, it is going to have the impact. Then section 10, subsection 10D, taxable maturity amount from life insurance policy. Most of the insurance policies, wherever there is a premium is 1:10. We ideally say for example, 1 lakh is the premium amount, the sum assured should be 10 lakhs. If that is a ratio in the any insurance policy, then the proceeds out of that, whatever the amount received, will be exempted. Suppose it is not in 1:8. Say for example, I am paying 1 lakh per year premium, but the sum assured is only 5 lakhs. What is going to happen? In those cases, the entire amount, what is the proceedings is available, the entire amount will be taxable. And now LIC policy, as everyone knows, 80C is an exempt deduction section where 1.5 lakhs is allowed as a deduction. If that proportion 1:10 is not followed, then 80C deduction is also not allowed for the tax benefit. A similar way, section 10, subsection 1, withdrawal from accumulated amounts from PF or PPF set up by the central government. But there is an exception for this. If you are withdrawing below 5 years, then interest accumulated on that is taxable. And section 10, 11A, interest on and withdrawals from Sukarnya Samruddhi scheme, that is exempted. Section 10, subsection 16, scholarships granted to meet the cost of education. Say for example, I'm a student, I'm doing some PG, where I'm working as well as in faculty for the particular college. But as a PG student, I'm eligible to get some scholarship from the government. What all the research I'm doing, maybe 30,000 or 40,000 per month. That amount, whatever I'm going to receive, to meet the cost of education. See, once I'm doing some research, that is for the PhD, I need to incur some expenditure. By the way of expenditure reimbursement or more than that, if I am getting anything, that will be exempted under income tax. You need not to pay anything. Next, 10 subsection 18. Any pension received by central or state government employees awarded by Paramavira Chakra, Mahavira Chakra are exempted. So overall served the country, whatever the reason, in those cases that has been exempted. And section 10, subsection 37. This is applicable for individual and HUF. Here, capital gains on acquisition of agriculture land that is situated in urban. There is urban agriculture land. We are going to deal in detail in capital gains chapter with respect to this point, but in simple way, what I need to take, say for example, any road or metro laying or anything, wherever they are acquiring any land, urban agriculture land which has been compulsorily acquired by the government, then it is totally exempt. But if the acquisition is non-government, say for example, I wanted to have my private railway line, for that I have acquired some land. This is because I am not government, I am an individual, that's a private person. Wherever I am acquiring, they don't call it as an acquisition, they call it as the person who is having the landowner is selling and I am buying. So it's a pure case of, it's a transfer. So there is no question of exemption in this case. Then yesterday we were discussing agriculture income is outside the ambit of Indian Income Tax Act. Why? Because the powers has been given to the states, that is a list to tax any income on agriculture. Now let us see how income tax treats this. Very simple. See, what is agriculture income? Basically, to qualify it as an agriculture income, there should be a cultivation process should have been done. That means you should have like sampling or anything. If you got any seed or any plant to grow it, and you need out of that, you will have generated some income. So there should be a cultivation process, and there should be a land. That land should be situated in India. Either if you have the urban, say for example in home, you have the terrace garden where you have cultivated some vegetable. Still, the land is in India and you have cultivated the process, both are satisfied. That's the reason it is going to be exempted. So cultivation and land should be situated in India, then only it should be qualified as an agriculture income to get the exemption, or I can say it is outside the purview of income tax. And you have the agriculture land, but you have not cultivated directly, but you have given that land portion to some rental basis for the purpose of agriculture. So whenever you are letting the land or subletting the land for the purpose of agriculture, then also it will be treated as agriculture income, and that amount or proceeds whatever you have received will be exempted, or it is outside the purview of income tax. Now, yes, there is agriculture land, but I have given it for some shelter purpose. Maybe, say for example, they would have put some shed where they have used it as a godown. Can you call it as agriculture income? Yes, there is an agriculture land is there, but it is not used for the purpose of agriculture. So it won't be considered as an agriculture income. It will be taxed as a regular income. And what are the, say for example, a nursery is maintained by someone. Their intention is to not cultivate and get the crop out of it, but they are going to sell the samples itself, or out of crop, if they get any seeds, they are going to sell it. So even then, it's a nurseries, whatever it is maintained, that is also considered as an agriculture income itself. To promote agriculture, this is very much required. So they have included this also. Now, foreign agriculture land. Yes, you have the agriculture land outside India, but you have cultivated some agriculture crop. Wherever there is a residence cases, the global income is taxable. In those cases, foreign agriculture land, what are the incomes generated out of agriculture process outside India, then it will be taxed. There is no exemption for them. And let us see, there are certain crops where we can generally see you are going to grow or manufacture, or you have to do some process and you can resell it. See, generally they have mentioned three crops very specifically, and there are other cases also. One is rubber, coffee and tea they have mentioned, where there is some, as a grower itself, I have the option to do some processing and sell it as a final product. And not only that, say for example, coconut. Yes, I am grower of coconuts. I have the trees. Out of coconut, there are so many sub-products are available. Out of that, if I do some processing and process it as in some mats or bags, gunny bags, whatever, there is a process of manufacturing of some item out of agriculture produce as well. So how you are going to deal with this kind of, either there will be a combination of both agriculture income as well as business income. How you are going to deal with this situation? That's what we are discussing. Yes, if we go by the rule, there are specific rules have been incorporated in particular aspect. Rule 7A, 7B, 8 and 7. For the easy sake, I have reorganized its rules as specific to rubber, coffee and tea and other cases. When it comes to rubber, what are the growing and manufacturing of rubber? What are the purpose? Say rubber is a tree. You are not going to cut the tree as it is and you are not going to manufacture the rubber. Where you are going to do some hole or something like that, where you are going to get some gum or something like that. Out of that, you are going to sell directly, or you can process it further and you can make it as a rubber bands or anything like that. Whatever the products are available. So 65% of the total income, whatever you have received, either by of growing and manufacture. See, if it is a only growing, whatever the raw rubber you got and you sold, it is 100% agriculture income. There is no doubt. Whenever you have grown and manufactured, so growing is also done by me and manufacture of rubber is also done by me. In those cases only it is applicable. So 65% will be considered as an agriculture income and 35% considered as an business income. Say for example, I got 2 lakhs out of growing and manufacture of rubber. What will be the quantum of taxable? 35% will be taxable and 65% is not taxable. What is 35%? That is 35% into 2 lakhs. That is net income, whatever I have received. That will be considered as 70,000 will be taxed as business income and 1.3 lakhs will be considered as an agriculture income. In similar way, coffee has been identified because coffee is having more process. That's the reason they have given 2 separate line item. Growing and cured. What is cured? You are going to dry the seeds. Say for example, you have the coffee fruit, you have removed the skin or whatever it is there, pulp, and you are going to cure that. as in raw coffee seeds. So only growing and selling, again, it's in purely agriculture income. Whenever you have grown and cured, then only it is taxable is 25%, and agriculture income which is not taxable is 75%. Say for example, next process, that's after curing, you have the option of roasting and grounding. That's a coffee powder, making of coffee powder. If you are as a cultivator, you have grown and made a coffee powder as well. In those cases, 40% will be treated as a business income and 60% treated as an agriculture income. When it comes to tea, similar way, tea there is no much process. Either you need to pluck the leaves and you need to dry it, that's all, and ground it. This is a simple process you are having. That's the reason only one item is available. Growing and manufacturing, again, if you have the leaves and you have sold it as it is, you haven't dried or nothing, no process has been carried out, then it's 100% agriculture income. If you have grown and manufactured tea, then 60% is agriculture and 40% is business income. So these are specific three cases they have been mentioned. How about the other cases? There are so many agriculture products which are having further processing. How you are going to deal with? So they have made it as a general rule. What is the net revenue you have received? What they are going to do is, let us come to here first. Business income. I'll come agriculture income later. Business income. Out of business income, say for example, I have grown some item and processed it and I have sold 1 lakh I have received. Sale value of final product is 1 lakh. From agriculture produce, whatever I got it, 1 lakh. Now, what is the amounts they are going to reduce is market value of agriculture produce, whatever I have used for the final product. Say for example, I have used something like for coconut, out of coconut, what is it? Jute, I have made some gunny bags. See, for that jute, there will be a value definitely. That market value I am going to deduct, and what is the processing cost which is required to make it as in mats or bags, that I am going to reduce. So this will be the cost of, sorry, profit from business income. And when it comes to market value, whatever I have reduced, here it is going to come market value, whatever I am going to receive minus cultivation cost. Yes, there will be obviously inherent cost will be there to maintain the crop or anything like that, that I am going to reduce, and the balance will be agriculture income. This agriculture income is exempted. Now, the general thing is, whenever we are discussing agriculture income is exempt, is it really agriculture income is exempt? Yes, it is exempt to the extent if you are an agriculturist, if you don't have any other commercial income other than agriculture income, then only fully exemption is available. Say for example, I am a professional as well as I am doing some agriculture activity. I'll do some calculation over here and how it is going to work. Let us see. Say agriculture income. $5 lakhs. Business income 10 lakhs. So total income is 15 lakhs. Now, what the section says, agriculture income is exempted. It's not going to end there, but what it says, agriculture is exempted to the extent of basic exemption and agriculture income. That's all. Now, let us try to, instead of 5 lakhs, I'll take it 2 lakhs. Let it be 5 lakhs only. For 15 lakhs, what will the taxes in regular, what we have discussed the slab, up to 2.5 lakhs. It is exempt, that is 0, 2.5 to 5 lakhs. It is 5%, that is 12,500, and 5 to 10 lakhs. It is 20%. 20%, that is 5 lakhs into 20%, that comes to 1 lakh, and about 10 lakhs, that is 5 lakhs into 30%, that is 1.5 lakhs. This is a regular taxable income. So this should be the ideally on this you need to pay taxes. Let us assume entire amount is taxable. So this will be the amount. Now let us assume only business income is there. If it is totally exempt, it is only 10 lakhs. What will be the taxable? We are going to deal only this amount. So there is a 30% slab, that is remaining 5 lakhs. Above 10 lakhs, that is 5 lakhs. So this will be the tax payable. Only business income. 1,12,500. If I am having only business income, I am going to pay tax of 1.125 lakhs. Suppose agriculture plus business. Plus business. This is the amount. Now the question arises, yes, we are discussing entire 5 lakhs should be exempted. But what Act says, whenever you are calculating agriculture income with other income, what is the quantum of deduction is allowed is to the extent of basic exemption limit plus agriculture income. What is the basic exemption limit? 2.5 lakhs is basic exemption limit. And agriculture income, it is 5 lakhs. Whatever the taxes you are going to pay based on your calculation on 7.5 lakhs, which will be allowed as an marginal relief. That's what I am discussing, relief, the word relief. This will be the relief amount you are going to get. How much is going to come? For first 5 lakhs, it is 12,500. Balance 2.5 lakhs, it is 50,000. That is 2.5 into 20%. So 1 lakh 62,500 will be allowed as a relief. Net payable is this minus this, 2 lakhs. See, if you are having only business income, you would have paid 1,12,500. Because of having agriculture as well as business income, you are ending with paying 2 lakhs. So if you see indirectly, what is the tax levied on your agriculture income? 87,500 has been levied on agriculture income. I don't say it has been levied, but numerically or mathematically, if we see, if I don't have any agriculture income, I'd have end up in paying 1.125 lakhs. Now, because of agriculture income, in addition to that, I am paying 87,500 as an additional. So what is the total amount I am paying? It is 2 lakhs. So directly, if you see, agriculture income is exempted, but literally it is not so. Now, whatever the calculation we are doing this is only applicable for individual and HUF. Whatever the partnership firm, company and other cases, this aggregation is not applicable. Entire 5 lakhs will be allowed as an exemption. Now, what is the intention? Because individuals are having tax slabs that is based on the income. That's the reason they don't want to give up entire amounts as in this. Suppose the same calculation if you upload for firm or any company, the calculation won't change. Why? Say for example, let us take the similar example for a company. What is the amount? Let us assume it is 30% you are going to pay. Here, only business income, it is 3 lakhs, that is 10 lakhs into 30%, it is 3 lakhs. And agree plus business income, that's a 15 lakhs, that comes to 4,50,000. Relief, what I said, relief basic exemption limit for company. What is the basic exemption? Nothing, 0. Agriculture income, it is 5 lakhs. 5 lakhs into 0, here it is 5 lakhs. Total comes to 5 lakhs into 30%, that comes to 1.5 lakhs. The same amount if I take here 1.5 lakhs. So what will be the impact? 4.5 minus 3 lakhs. So you are ending with same amount. So there is no relevance of calculating other than individual and HUF. See, the provisions also, it is very clearly applicable for individual and HUF. Even though in the absence of that provision also, if you calculate for the other cases, you are going to end up with paying the same taxes. That's the reason they have not imposed anything on other than individual and HUF. So directly if you see, agriculture income is exempted, but indirectly if you see, it is taxable to some extent. Let us move on to the next topic. Yes, let us come back to our accounting. See, without accounting, we cannot do anything for the commerciality. See, income tax also doesn't deal directly with the accounting, but indirectly it deals with accounting, saying it recognizes both cash basis of accounting as well as mercantile, that is accrual basis of accounting. It recognizes both. It won't say that you need to follow the specific method. End of the day, Income Tax Act, what it wants the taxes to be paid. That's all. At the end of the day, they want the taxes to be paid. Now, what are the methods of accounting? Yes, cash basis and mercantile or accrual basis is available. Now, what is the impact on income tax? Yes, method of accounting is relevant only to the extent of two heads, that is profits and gains from business or profession and income from other sources. For the rest other three heads of income, the method of accounting, whatever you are following, it is totally irrelevant for income tax purposes. I'm going to deal with why it is irrelevant. That means if I say method of account is irrelevant, what is the actual amounts you have received itself is irrelevant. It doesn't mean that only books are irrelevant, but the actual amount received and paid is also irrelevant. So only whenever we are dealing with method of accounting or what are the accounting books you are having, which is relevant only for the limited purposes of PGBP and income from other sources. Rest of the all three heads, your actual books of accounts, whether you have received or not, entire thing is not at all relevant. Let us start with the first head of income. As yesterday we have discussed, there are 5 heads of income. One is salary, income from house property, business or profession, capital gain and income from other sources. Let us start with the first head of income, that is income from salary. What is income from salary? See, when we are discussing income from salary, there should be a relationship between the recipient and payment. Yesterday we discussed one cannot generate any income. There should be two persons. There should be a payer and there should be a recipient. Now, what is the relationship? To say it is a salary, the relationship should be employer and employee. Whether full-time or part-time is irrelevant. Whether your employer is in India or outside India is also irrelevant. So the relationship is very important than nomenclature. Whether you call it as a salary, whatever you call it, as a commission or bonus or any allowance, whatever you call it, the relationship is going to determine head of income under salary. So whenever there is a relationship between two people is employer and employee, then income from salary is going to comes into picture. Now section 15 is a charging section for income from salary. If you see any salary, we can see three categories of heads. One is there will be a basic salary package kind of thing, and there will be allowances and there will be a perquisites. Now let us understand what is the word allowance and perquisite. Allowance is something like that you are going to spend from your end, your employer is going to pay for that. Say for example, I am staying in a rented house. For that, my employer is going to give house rent allowance. This is a compensation whatever I have spent for that. Perquisite. Say for example, my employer has not given allowance, but he has given a whole house itself to stay for me. So that is called a perquisite. So I have spent and I got reimbursed, that is an allowance. I haven't spent, but the benefit directly has given to me, that is called perquisite. Now, why perquisites are taxed? See, whenever you are generating some income, what you are going to do generally,
you are going to spend. You cannot keep it as it is, no. You need to spend for livelihood or anything. You need to spend for eating or whatever the thing. See, if suppose if they don't tax the perquisite, what is going to happen? Yes, I want to stay in a home. They are going to give the free home. For eating, they are providing the catering services or whatever it is there. For lights or any electricity or any homemade, whatever is there, everything is paid by the employer. What is going to happen in my hands? I may receive very nominal salary, maybe 10 or 20,000. But when you calculate the benefits, whatever has been given, it may be in lakhs. So what the government is losing, instead of getting the tax on 2 or 3 lakh rupees, they are going to end up with only getting 10 or 20,000. These are the mechanisms where the employer and employee has cheated or managed or evaded tax on that. They where and all they have made it. So what they have done is, whether you have paid directly or indirectly, but in the hands of employee, it should be taxed. This is the intention behind the taxation of perquisites as well. Now, if you see, in any employer and employee relationship, there are two cases is possible. One is advance salary and salary in arrears. Say for example, advance salary. What is going to happen? Yes, there is a commitment on first of every month. I am going to get the salary. Because of the other reason, I wanted extra amount from my employer. You may call it as an loan or whatever you call it. But if it is an salary advance, it is, if it is in the case of loan, it won't be taxed. But advance salary, say for example, for the month of March, they have paid salary in the month of first March itself. Usually in the next month first they used to pay, but whatever the case may be, for whatever the reason may be, they have paid on first March itself. So what is going to happen? I'm going to get the salary in advance, that is the income in advance. So it will be taxed on the receipt basis. That's the reason I told you here the accrual system of account is not going to applicable. So even then the salary is paid for the month of March, it should be taxed in the next year. Still, whenever I got the actual receipt, it will be taxed in the same year itself. What is going to happen for the arrears? Say for example, my employer is facing, because of COVID-19, you can say all the employers having the problem with the cash. So they may defer the payment over a period of time. Maybe 50% they may, 75% they may pay. But end of the day, once the calendar month is got over, your salary got accumulated, whether it is paid or not. So receipt or due, whichever is earlier, will be taxed for the purposes of salary. Your actual receipt is irrelevant. So receipt or accrual, that is a due, whichever is earlier, will be taxed as a salary. Now, I said there are certain allowances and perquisites. See, what is allowance? What are all the cash benefits they have given, that we call it as allowances. What is non-cash benefits they have given, that we call it as a perquisite. Now, basic salary, yes, it's 100% in cash, you are going to tax it. They have listed three categories. It's an illustrative, it is not an exhaustive list. Because of limited time availability, I wanted to cover these points. See, I have listed certain items of allowances and which are fully taxable, irrespective of you have spent or not. Say, for example, basic DA, overtime allowance, city compensatory allowance, fixed medical allowance, tiffin or lunch allowance. Here, tiffin or lunch allowance up to 50 rupees per day, it is exempted. Still, if they are provided in-house, that is exempted. If it is not provided, it is fully taxable. Interim allowance, project, or whatever the name you allotted for that particular item of benefit, entire amount will be taxed. Now, whether you have spent for that particular amount or not. Say for example, fixed medical allowance I have highlighted. Yes, they have given 5,000 per month because of, say for example, my job is something like sales related where I am going to travel a lot. Because of that, I may have travel expenditure. There is a travel allowance or medical expenditure where because of my risky job, they may feel that yes, there is a prone to any medical emergency, they would have given some allowance. Whether I have spent it or not. If at all I am spent also, it will be not allowed as an expenditure. That is, say for example, fixed medical allowance, if I got 5,000, out of that for medicine, if I would have spent 1,000 rupees, that 1,000 will be not allowed as an expenditure in my hand. Entire 5,000 will be taxable. When it comes to fully exempt, there are a few items which are fully exempt. If you see, these are all not in general nature, very specific nature. Statutory allowance granted to High Court and Supreme Court judges, compensatory allowance received by the judge, or allowances paid to UNO, allowances paid by government to its employees outside India, wherever they are staying outside India for the purpose of Indian government. These are very specific cases which have the limited utility. And there are certain cases which are partially taxable and partially exempted. The main we are going to concentrate on HRA. See, this is a HRA we can discuss later. And apart from that, there are exemption depend on actual expenditure basis. These are all the 7 items or 6 items, I can say, where it is allowed as an expenditure based allowance. Say for example, conveyance allowance. Say for example, I have received a conveyance of 10,000 in this month, and I have spent 5,000 rupees towards the office expenditure, office travel. In those cases, 5,000 will be allowed as an expenditure, and balance 5,000 is taxable. See, conveyance, daily allowance, helper allowance, uniform, research, traveling, and transfer. These are all the allowances where I am received as a lump sum. But if I utilize for the specific purpose of my organization, then that will be allowed as an expenditure, or it is allowed as an exempt. So 10,000 conveyance I received, out of that 5,000 I spent for my office purpose, the balance 5,000 will be taxable. Ideally, if you see, these are all the expenditure, it is in the nature of reimbursements, wherever I have spent and I got the money from the company. If it is in the nature of allowance, it is fully taxable. That's what I told. Here I am talking about the conveyance. If you see transport allowance, a lump sum amount has been given for the specific purpose, transport, which is totally taxable. They don't give any deduction out of that. But if it is in the nature of reimbursement, there will be always scope for getting reduction. And a similar way, exemptions does not depends on any actual expenditure. I have listed couple of things here. Children education allowance. Irrespective of your actual spend, if your employer has given children education allowance 1 lakh per year, you would have spent 1,50,000 also, but the exemption is allowed to the extent of only 100 rupees per month per child. Say for example, if you have 2 children, only maximum 2 children is allowed. If you have a 3rd child, it is not allowed. So ideally, if you see 100 into 12 months into 2 children, there's a 2,400 rupees as a children education allowance. It is allowed as an exemption. If you received 1 lakh, what is the amount of deduction you are going to get? Exemption 2.4 thousand, that is 2,400. Remaining amount, whatever, 97,600 rupees will be taxable. In the similar way, hostel allowance, that is 300. Literally, if you see, these are all the what all the amount they have specified, it is long back. I can say it may be decades. They have not revised it. Still, there is a provision, so we are studying. In similar way, transport allowance, which is only for handicapped people or disabled employees, 3,200 rupees. If it is a regular normal person, there is no allowance. Like transport allowance, say for example, a person who is having his job itself is a transport. Say for example, I am a pilot. My job is totally traveling from one place to another place. That my job itself is like that. In those cases, whenever I get allowance for transportation, then to the extent of 10,000 per month will be allowed as an exemption. Balance will be taxable. Say for example, I have received 15,000. Whether 10,000 is allowed? No. Maximum is 70% of 15,000. So what is the amount you are going to calculate out of that? So maximum of 70 or 10,000, whichever is lower will be allowed as an exemption. So these are the couple of exemptions I am intended to tell you. Next, let us come to house rent allowance. This is one of the allowance I am trying to explain you. See, the income tax has been divided into 2 parts. That is, entire country has been divided. One is the people who are staying in metro places and non-metro places. So whenever you are staying in metro places, this is the calculation you are going to do, and non-metro places, this is the places you are going to see. Here the only income tax recognized for metro places. Even then the media says Bangalore is also metro place. Here it is not considered. only Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata. All these 4 places are considered. If you're staying in Bangalore, it is considered as a non-metro only for taxation purpose. Now, what is the amount of exemptions you are going to get? Here, actual list of the following will be allowed as an exemption. Actual HRA received, rent paid minus 10% of salary and 50% of salary. If you see metro and non-metro, the entire calculation is same. Only 40% is a percentage difference. If you are here, it is 50%. Here it is 40%. Let us try to understand with an example. Now, for the purposes of HRA, what is the salary? If you have multiple allowances also, you are going to deal with only, you are going to take basic plus DA, that is a dearness allowance. So for example, if you are having the basic of 1 lakh, DA is 25,000, let us assume. So total salary for the purposes of HRA is 1.25 lakhs. Now what they are telling, one is actual HRA received. So actual HRA received. Actual HRA received may be 35,000, let us assume. Now least of the following is exempted. One is actual HRA received, that is 35,000. Next, what it says, rent paid minus 10% of salary. Rent paid, let us assume you are paying rent of 20,000 and 10% of salary, that is into 0.1. So rent paid minus 10% of salary. What is the amount? 20 minus 12,500. That comes to 7,500. Next, it says 50% of your salary. Next item is 50% of your salary. So least of the following is exempted. What is the least you are getting here? 7,500 is the least amount you are getting. So 7,500 will be allowed as an exemption and balance amount will be taxable. So in our case, what is taxable is 27,500 is taxable. This is how HRA calculation is going to work. Suppose this is the same case, instead of 50,000, if we take 40%, our calculation won't change, because the second category, it is only 7,500. Even if you are paying more or less, it won't have any impact on this. So this is the crucial calculation for HRA purposes. Then let us see what all the deductions are available from salary income. Yes, to get a salary, definitely you spend some amount. Do you mean that as if you are doing a business, you are going to get any deductions like expenditures? No, because salary income, where your employer is going to take the risk and you're the beneficiary most of the times. So there is no separate deductions are available apart from the exemptions, whatever is available. There are 3 specific deductions that have been given under section 16. One is standard deduction, that is 50,000 rupees or salary income, whichever is lower. Say for example, if you have joined, your salary is 40,000 per month. You joined in the month of March. You got only 1 month salary. That's a 40,000. So if you compare 40,000 salary for the whole year, that is for 12 months, and against the 50,000, whichever is lower will be allowed as a deduction. That is 40,000 is allowed as a deduction. And next, entertainment allowance. See, entertainment allowance is only applicable for government employees wherever there is an expenditure which is towards the entertainment. How much is allowed as a deduction? 5,000 or 20% of basic salary is the maximum amount which is allowed as a deduction. So 5,000 per year or 20% of basic salary. If you are getting salary of 10 lakhs, 20% comes to 2 lakhs. Still, the maximum allowance, entertainment allowance of deduction available is only 5,000 rupees. And the professional tax. What is professional tax? Taxes needs to be paid to the state government, because this entry has been in the state list, that is list 2, wherever there is a tax on employment. Say for example, in Karnataka, you are having, if your salary is more than 50,000, you need to pay 200 rupees per month as a professional tax. Wherever you are paying professional tax, that amount you will be allowed as a deduction. That amount is maximum of 2,500 rupees. In generally also, there are only 4 or 5 states in India are collecting professional tax, that is not exceeding 2,400 rupees. So still they have made it a 2,500 is a maximum amount. Whatever they are paying, that is allowed as a deduction under the head salary income. This is what I am trying to explain related to salary. If you are having any doubts, let us